The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back, in case you're wondering, with George Case. George is here. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm fine. I'm here.
Oh, good. We are with Full House, and I'd like to introduce first our usual suspects. Chad Rubin is here. Ronnie Rabinovich is here. David Hubler is here. I'm here, and we have guests. We have two guests. One of them is Weyne Unger of Weighted Donuts on this station, and he's going to explain New Age stats. The other guest is Daryl Berger, who's been on the airwaves before, but never on this show. He's the author of two terrific baseball books about two personalities that are as different as night and day. One of the books he wrote about was Roy White, and the other, Mitch Williams. So any of you baseball fans know personalities. These guys aren't in any way alike, and we'll talk to him. But first I want to beg the indulgence of Weyne Unger, who's rushed this morning, and he's going to give us a bit of a tutorial on what I call New Age stats. Most of us are, me included, me especially, I'm kind of old school, and it took me a long time to even realize that they're figuring statistical performances based on statistics in a different way. And I'd like Wayne to explain what's happening in the baseball world, if you will.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me qualify things a little bit. To say that I'm going to give a tutorial, that's a bit of a reach. I am far from an expert, but I do buy into it. And you know, it was back around 1985 when I read my first Bill James baseball abstract book that, you know, I started, you know, I started realizing, like, yeah, this guy who we used to, like, watch over the years, who seemed so important, but yet was batting .250, was yet so important to the team. And back in the day, we didn't have cable, so you watched your local team. And if you were home on a Saturday afternoon, you would watch the game of the week. And other than that, all your other baseball information came from the newspapers. And so it started to become clear to me as to why these players who we watched were to us were all-star level players, even though, you know, in the overall scheme of things, according to traditional statistics, were like, meh. So, you know, one of the things that Bill James was big on was on-base percentage and not getting caught stealing, not grounding into double plays. You know, basically the Moneyball thing. Bases are better than outs, and yes, they are. But I think everything, you know, like everything in society today to me has become like an extreme. And I personally still use what I call a hybrid approach. My eyeball still tells me things. One of the first articles I read in that abstract, Bill James thought that Brian Downing was a better leadoff player and more valuable than Willie Wilson of the Kansas City Royals. Now, Brian Downing got on base at a better percentage, but did he hit more triples? Did he put himself on third base? 21 times in a year. Did he steal bases? Oh, yes, he got caught stealing, but did Brian Downing steal bases? Did Brian Downing make the pitcher nervous? Did he make him rush his delivery to the plate to help the batter, to help the batter? And then one other thing that I felt that James missed on was the defense. I mean, Willie Wilson was good for 100 more putouts a year than Brian Downing. So again, everything is a hybrid. Going to war, I myself do not understand war 100%. I really don't. A lot of these things, and I post articles, statistical articles, I should say deep statistical analysis articles, on the group Weighted Donuts many times, and I read them, and you know what? It's not like I understand them 100%, but there are concepts in there that I get and I find interesting, and that's why I pass it on. But war, basically,
you should give a spell it out for people who don't, know what we're talking about. We're not going to war against anybody.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, war is wins above replacement. Okay, so I should have started there with the basic wins above replacement. So, in other words, if somebody has an 8.0 WAR, he's worth 8 wins a year above an average replacement player. So, and that's calculated using batting runs, base running runs, and fielding runs. Okay? So defensive runs count. The saving defensive runs count. And they count big. They also adjust for the position you play. There will be a league adjustment. And in some cases, there will be a park adjustment. And that's for position players.
What statistic do you use on a regular, new age statistic, if you will, that you use on a regular basis to analyze your fantasy team, to analyze the Yankees, opponents? What statistics?
Okay, well, I don't do fantasy baseball. I do stat replay baseball. I play this game called Diamond Mine Baseball, which is kind of like along the lines of Stratomatic. And quite frankly, the statistical analysis I use in that, in some cases, because it's on a computer and its numbers are the numbers are the numbers, I wouldn't equate it 100% to real life. Okay, so when I'm looking at a player for that type of venue, I don't look at runs. I don't look at RBIs. I don't look at stolen bases.
Say the Yankees were looking to trade a player for another player, and you were going to decide in your own head, is this going to be a good deal? What statistic that we may not know about would you go to decide?
Well, I don't have any. I don't have any hidden gems. I don't know if that's a good analogy because, to me, are you trading from a strength? Are you trading from a weakness? Are you
just to analyze the player's performance and what he's going to do to help.
Okay. Well, performance. I mean, basically, I look at OPS. I look at, batting average, on base percentage, slugging percentage. But OPS itself is not the definitive statistic because you may get a guy that doesn't have a lot of power, but he's got batting average. Guys with a lot of power, their OPS will be, much higher. They kind of get it kind of gives them like a little boost in their OPS, guys that hit home runs. but will bat. So you will have guys with you'll have 300 hitters with a 370 batting average. But if the guy didn't have a lot of power, you can have another guy that hit 250. But had a lot of power.
His maybe that the 250 hitter is more valuable because he'll produce more.
Maybe.
It sounds like Joe Mauer the last couple of years.
You see, what it is. I don't think anything is definitive, but I think people who go one way or the other are shortchanging themselves. And
I happen to think that OPS is a great stat, both for pitchers to see how hitters are performing against them, and for batters to see the total worth of their skills at bat. It's a great stat as far as I'm concerned. Not the
if you were, I just want a quick question. If you were trying to teach someone the rudiments of baseball, as our fathers did to us years ago, which 2 or 3 stats for not pitchers, let's just exclude pitchers for a moment, but which 2 or 3 stats would you recommend that they follow? I mean, the old day you'd follow batting average. That was it. Which 2 would you teach a person new to the game to follow?
I would teach OPS. I don't know if
you still got to start with batting average.
Okay.
You want listen. You know what? I think it starts with batting average, and depending on the player, okay, will depend. How can I explain this? Will depend on where you go, where you point out the other stats. I'll give you an example. Okay. You got a guy, you got a second baseman, DJ LeMahieu. The guy hit 310. He had a 374 on base percentage, but he didn't have much power. He had a 783 OPS, but he scored 95 runs, and he struck out 90 times. And I'm going to say only because last year, if you only strike out 90 times in 600 at bats, that wasn't bad, and he walked 59 times. Now you look at a guy like Avisail Garcia, okay, who batted 330, okay. His OPS was 885, but you know what? He's in 518 at bats. He struck out 111 times. He had 33 walks. So again, DJ, he just had some more. He had more home runs, but he had more RBIs because he batted third, but he scored less runs. So it's hard to say what you can teach.
If I could interrupt you for just a second, especially with Abisail Garcia, an interesting stat for him would be BABIP, batting average with balls in play, because this was the first time Garcia hit for a high batting average. I don't know what his batting average in balls in play was, but if it was like 390, you can say he can't sustain that. He was lucky. If his batting average in balls in play was like 350, you could say, well, he might be a 300 hitter again next year. So that's one way of evaluating what batting average is from 1 year to the next.
Yes, that is an excellent point. He was very lucky, and it's funny you mention that because Dan Zimborski, who is like really more of like a Mac Daddy of sabermetrics, he was telling me earlier in the season, that Avisail Garcia was going to drop like a rock. But Avisail Garcia actually was lucky all year round. And I, all through the season, every time Dan was on the show, I kidded him about that. And to show you the opposite end of that, look at the abysmal start that Manny Machado had, and what a great second half he had. And again, he had unbelievably bad luck with batting average, with batted balls in play. So
this is the way that a modern stat can verify or not verify what fans have been saying for years. I'm a Tigers fan, and Nick Castellanos, at the beginning of the year, I said, boy, he's hit a lot of balls hard that were caught. He's really been hitting in bad luck. And usually that's just your own eyes and the few games that you see. But then a few weeks later, I saw that he was one of the top 10 players in hitting the ball hard, that they can actually measure that. And indeed, he was hitting in bad luck, and I bet you would find the same with Machado. And eventually, both of their luck turned somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly true. But, the new stats go beyond that as well. They also, for the war for pitches is basically, it's about things that they can control, and I think they call it fielding. I think
fielding independent average.
Yes, or fielding independent pitching. And that too is adjusted for parks and scale to how many innings. But
right.
You know what? But overall, the way we look at things, so again, but a pitcher's performance will, is also like, hey, did they trade that great defensive shortstop, or did they put that defensive shortstop, make him a utility infielder, and replace him with a guy that's an offensive shortstop but doesn't cover the ground? Did he change parks? Look at R.A. Dickey. Okay, I never understood why Toronto traded for R.A. Dickey, and I'll tell you why. What is that? That's the Sky Dome? That's not the Sky Dome. Rogers Field, the Rogers Center, with the retractable roof. The knuckleball, it depends on wind currents. I never forget. I was like, man, he's in for a dive. He's in for a dive. There's, he's not going to pitch well there. And he after the trade, he was average. He was decent, but he became more of an innings eater. There's, the thing about basically sabermetrics, that, like I say, it's a mix. And I'm not an expert, but like, I look into these things. What about, remember how, people used to always, or I don't know about everybody, but me, I always used to wonder what Ted Williams would have been like in Yankee Stadium and what Joe DiMaggio would have been in Fenway Park.
Oh, that's
You're not the only one who thought about that.
What I wonder about with Ted Williams was, as you know, he was an implacable pull hitter and refused to go against the shift. But the shift wasn't employed against him very often back in his day. Now, if he was up, there'd be they'd have the whole team on the right-hand side of the infield. And I wonder
he still wouldn't give in.
Well, that's my question. I wonder. That would be very good. I would like to see that, because he was such a bright guy, and to see at what point his basic stubbornness would be really at war with his learning. The other thing, though, with the ball the way it is now, he could hit the ball out the other way. Part of the reason that he was such an implacable pull hitter back in his day was that's the way he could hit the ball out of the park. Now he'd be bigger, the ball is livelier, and he'd have power the other way. So there would be more of incentive for him to go the other way.
I wanted to step in here a second, because you're mentioning Ted Williams.
I was going to call on you to ask you what you think how your dad would have responded to this.
Well, here's what I wanted to mention, and you talk about Ted Williams and the shift. The first time that the Ted Williams shift was employed was by Lou Boudreau in 1946 at Fenway Park. My dad was the only Cleveland player on the left side of the field. And he did that, Boudreau did that, because Williams was such a dead pull hitter. And Ted refused to go the other way. And he was very stubborn. And during his career, I think he might have changed a little bit, but his basic strength and his, the art of hitting, the science of hitting was to get the pitch that you liked, and he was a pull hitter. So I can only tell you from my dad's experience that the shift, was employed it was not that effective. Today it might be more effective, but, as David mentioned and as we talked about the difference of Fenway Park and Yankee Stadium, no question. Fenway Park had that short, green monster in left field. DiMaggio would have done amazing things. And on the other hand, if Williams had ever played in New York, which he never did, but if he had played for the Yankees, that short porch for a line drive hitter at Yankee Stadium, you don't know how many home runs he would have hit.
Yeah, and Bill James, he does a handbook every year, and he actually in it, he puts down he for every player whether how effective they were against the defensive shifts, and overall defensive shifts work more than they don't. So and that's a fact.
They do, huh? It is a fact.
It is a fact.
Yeah, I think when my dad played, Boudreau was using that as an experiment, and then there were other managers who used it, and of course the shift today. But a hitter has to adjust. If they're shifting and he can go the other way, then that's what they're going to do. Now, a lot of them have trouble going the other way, or in the case of like Williams, he was very stubborn. He said, "Hey, my strength is I'm a pull hitter. I'm not going to go the other way," and he rarely did.
Well, my point is that if only one team in the league is going to shift against you, you can't tinker with your swing to foil a shift that you're going to see 10% of the time or 15% of the time. If Williams saw that shift every day the way players are seeing now against every team, then he might have thought differently.
Yeah, I think you're right. He probably would have. But, that's all in the past, and it's hard to say, what would happen because trying to compare what it is today with what it was back then. But I just wanted to mention that because that Williams shift was a defensive ploy, first employed by, Lou Boudreau to combat, Williams' great hitting ability.
I also wonder what kind of psychological effect that the shift has on players. I should say the batters.
I think it probably does have a psychological effect. But on the other hand, a guy like Williams, I mean, he was so set in his ways and so stubborn, he just wouldn't do it. Now, I know later on, I think he did. He might have either, moved up in the back box or moved back in the box, delayed his swing a little bit to go the other way. But, Ted was a stubborn guy. And, he always considered himself the greatest hitter in baseball. And, hey, he was the last guy to hit 406 in 1941. So,
yeah.
And when he came out of Korea, didn't he come close to hitting 400 again?
Yeah, I think he hit like 388.
Yeah, something like that. And this is
not
a very fast guy to begin with.
No.
By that time,
he often said to my dad, he said, "Casey, if I had your foot, which meant his speed, and you had my bat, they'd never get us out."
Let me ask you gentlemen a question. To go a little further into war and whether or not how relevant it is. I think it brings good awareness to how you evaluate a player, but I think it's far from perfect. Let's go back to 2012. If you can remember, that's when Miguel Cabrera, I believe he won the Triple Crown, and he won the MVP. And Mike Trout finished second. And there was discussion. I won't say controversy. There was a lot of discussion as to who was the real MVP. What do you gentlemen think about that particular race that year?
Well, I'm a Tigers fan, so I'll lead with my prejudice, but I can also give an argument to back it up. And that is, what also happened that year is that Miguel Cabrera moved from first to third so that the newly acquired Prince Fielder could play first. The fact that a superstar like Cabrera would expose himself to going to a much more difficult defensive position. He lost about 20 pounds in the off season, came to camp much more agile than he'd been in years, and played a mediocre to slightly bad third base, but still acceptable, allowing Prince Fielder to go to first. That, to me, meant a lot to the team. And therefore, it comes down to your definition of valuable. If it's simply the person who puts up the best statistics, then there's really no reason to vote. Because WAR is not, maybe it's not a real precise statistic, but I think there was at least a 2 WAR difference between Trout and Cabrera. But if valuable means the commodity that you add to your particular team in their overall accomplishment, then I think you vote for Cabrera.
Yeah. And that's intangibles, which there are no statistics to cover. But before we end this, I just want to say something that Alan Blumkin taught me about defensive statistics that Bill James compiled. They're not really accurate because how many balls a guy chases down in center field in a particular year is based a lot on what kind of pitching staff. Do you have a pitching staff that's pitches for fly balls or gets ground balls? Same with the infield. Shortstop looks like he's not covering much ground, but he's not getting many ground balls. So I just wanted to say that quickly. I know that in keeping with Wayne's schedule, you've got to be out of here at the bottom of the hour.
I do have to be out of here, and and that was an excellent point you made about the 2012 MVP race. And I just want to go to one last thing before I take off. Okay, last year, American League. Now, me personally, I thought it was Altuve was the MVP. I didn't think that there was a question. A lot of people felt that it was really, really close between Judge and Altuve. Any opinion on that from anyone?
Oh, I think Altuve had the intangibles, and I think Judge's negative streak in the middle of the year worked against him.
Right, absolutely, Ralph. I think that was the period during the season. If he kept up his hitting the way he did in the beginning and at the very end, and that's right. And if he had hit 70 home runs, Altuve would have had to wait. I've liked Altuve ever since I saw him play in Cleveland one day.
I did too.
And I said, this guy is just, his size belies his ability.
Yeah,
I mean, this guy is just tremendous.
How much does he influence his players by?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Miles, that's got to help.
And at the end of the year, I came to realize. I mean, I was rooting for Altuve, even though I'm a diehard Yankees fan. I think Judge will have plenty of opportunities to do this. But you're right, Ralph. I mean, that period when he just couldn't hit destroyed any chance I thought he had of winning the MVP.
Okay, now you see Bill James, he broke it down even more. Okay, so basically he has a thing of expected wins, and he said the Yankees, based on his statistics, should have won 102, and they only won 91. Okay, now and the Astros won exactly what they should have won, 101 games. So he said that because of that, even though the WAR, Altuve had 8.3 and Judge had 8.1, he said that in itself reduces Judge's win contribution by 11% and drops him more to like 6.8. He also, and another breakdown was Judge hit better with the bases empty than with runners on base. Okay, his OPS was 90 points higher with the bases empty, and Altuve's OPS was only 1 point higher. But with men on base, in late innings of close games, Judge hit like 216 with a 780 OPS, whereas Altuve hit 441 with a 1.190.
Well, maybe they weren't giving Judge anything to hit because nobody was around him, and maybe. Judge had plenty of protection in that lineup.
Yeah,
I mean, at that time,
what Judge lacks is strike. Is he doesn't know the strike zone. You don't have to throw him a pitch ball to get it. You don't have to throw him a strike to get him out. And so anytime somebody gets on base and you bear down, and you don't throw the ball across the straight, he's out. You know, his level of performance is by no means established. You know, he could hit 70 home runs next year. You know, or he could strike out 250 times and flame out. You just don't know yet.
Well, from what I saw of Judge, after about the fourth or fifth game of the season, I saw an uncanny change in his recognition of the strike zone. And then I think when he went into just a little bit of a funk, I think he reverted to his old ways. He was reaching.
Well, that's the idea. Is he going to keep doing that or not? We don't know.
Exactly. And I think that's what hurt him. So it's like he learned it and then he forgot it. It's almost
right.
It's that old adage: if you never forget the basics, you never have to go back to them. So, but gentlemen, I wish I could have been a little more articulate, a little more eloquent.
You were terrific.
You were great.
I just try. The bottom line is, I don't want to. Ralph brought me on because he said you guys were a bunch of old geezers, and he wanted me to explain this. But
I'm a young geezer.
You know what
I don't know anything about that.
And I told him, I said, I'm not really the guy because
Wayne, you'll see in 30 years, you'll see what a privilege it is to be a geezer with a memory and
30 years.
Memory.
Consider the alternative.
Yeah.
He makes me out to be 30 years old, but I can, if I wanted to, I can collect Social Security as well. I'm just waiting another couple of years. So it's not like I'm not there either.
Your secret is out, Wayne. Who knew?
Who knew?
Show us your AARP card.
Yeah. Let's just say that I've been eligible for an AARP card for 13 years. Okay?
Wow.
So you can do the math.
Math I can do. I can't figure out batting averages, but I can do that.
There you go.
Thanks a lot. That was great.
Gentlemen, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Let us get to Darrell Berger.
Can I just make one? Oh, go ahead. I wanted to.
Oh, please.
I'm not a statistician, and that's one of the reasons why I asked what couple of stats you'd give to a newbie in the sport. But a couple of years ago, and George, correct me, I think you were there at the DC baseball history gathering. A fellow got up to make a presentation about statistics, and he went into he was comparing the number of strikeouts versus the number of runners on base, which is such an arcane thing. Anyway, but I'm listening to this, and I can recall very vividly when I was a really young guy. My parents would listen to the Yankee games on the radio, and whenever Tommy Byrne came in to pitch, they would say, "Oh, here he comes. He's going to load the bases, then he's going to strike out the side." And they were always frustrated that they brought in Tommy Byrne to do this because the game was very often on the line. And I'll never forget that little anecdote. And here is this. He says, in the history of baseball, the pitcher who had the most strikeouts and the most men on base was Tommy Byrne. I mean, he verified a most arcane statistic. So there's something to be said for these statistics, even if you don't know all the little wars and whatever else are acronyms that are being bandied about these days. So you have to respect it.
Well,
you know what, David, while you're there, I know we want to get going, but what you're talking about that, in the old days, they didn't have all the benefit of the statistics, and, it was more of a gut and experience And I've always been, the other way because I grew up that way. But, today with all the new age stats and everything that's going on, I mean, it's a totally different world. You got managers looking at all their computer sheets. They got bench coaches looking at the computer sheets and doing the scouting reports. I mean, it's a different world than what it used to be. And, I think it's gotten so sophisticated, and I'm not a stat guy. I mean, I worked for Saber. Saber is a wonderful organization, but I have always been a little bit more of, involved in the history and the knowledge of the game as opposed to the statistical analysis of the game.
Yeah.
And
I've always enjoyed talking about the intangibles of a player.
Yeah, and I learned a couple of years ago at a presentation at Nats Park. Anyone goes to a ball game these days, if you look behind home plate, there's this box that sits up on the second deck or wherever, just behind home plate. Very innocuous box. That box is recording everything that happens on the field. And every major league, and I guess AAA may even have them, but every major league game is being calculated by the statistics that this box generates and fed into a central repository. I never knew this. I never noticed the box before. But that's where these stats are coming from. Everything that happens on the field. Bunts,
now,
pitches.
there has to be input by human beings because even back when I was in the Air Force working with early computers, they said garbage in, garbage out, that kind of thing. So...
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there are.
It's not only garbage in, garbage out, but it's who's viewing it and who's not. It's some people do their homework and some people don't. One of the reasons why Verlander was so effective when he came over to Houston was not their analytics, but they had more sophisticated video that Verlander could watch to look at his arm slot and so forth. He studied that information and made some changes and was even better his starts for Houston than he was at the beginning of the year for Detroit. Some other pitcher's going to look at that and say, "Oh, I'm good enough."
Well, in reference to the statistics the teams keep, when Magic Johnson bought the Dodgers, they built a new clubhouse for the Dodgers. Well, they took the old clubhouse, all the lockers, and they made like cubby holes. What do people do at work? They have little
cubicles.
They made those lockers into cubicles, and they hired technicians, guys that know nothing about baseball other than to analyze the statistics. They don't even set foot on the field. There's no eye candy type thing that, scouts look at statistics, but they have the eye candy. That's a different game. Eye test, where they look at the player. These guys do nothing like that. All they do, 8 hours a day, they sit in their cubicle and they analyze statistics. The statistics that go on the field to the coaches, the bench coaches, and what have you. They don't just come from an advanced scout. They come from like 28 guys sitting in a room compiling them. It's crazy, the game, and how much money teams put into it is affecting pennant races. That
Absolutely.
Kind of thing.
Well, it's similar to what happened in the stock market years ago. It used to be stockbrokers were people who knew a little bit about business, but gradually it changed. And stockbrokers now and people who analyze the stock market are all PhDs in math and economics. They've maybe never been inside an office, let alone a factory, but that's what they do. And now that's changed over to baseball. A lot of these guys probably didn't know what end of the bat to hold, but they just look at these stats and analyze them just as numbers. And you see guys who are GMs now.
Moneyball played credence to that, where they had the little chubby guy who's coming in and making the decisions for Odd Howe and what
That's
have
right.
you. And you saw how the old-time scouts resented change.
Sure.
And as much
that was a classic scene for me, Ralph and Darrell, in Moneyball, because my dad, being a former player, also a scout. I mean, I know the reactions, and the casting was superb when they had that meeting with the scouts, and the scouts are talking baseball language, and what's his name is really talking, sabermetrics, Moneyball. I mean, the stats versus the eyeballs, totally different world, and definitely a conflict of the old game versus the new game.
I feel that the conflict has been on its way to being resolved. I think the stat heads are a little more accepting of the realities of players as human beings, and I think the scouts have adopted to some of the sabermetrics. I don't think there's an us versus them mentality now, several years later, that there was in Moneyball when it first started out.
Yeah, it's a good point. Very good point, Darrell.
Hello. Hello? Yep.
Hello? We're here.
Yeah.
Ralph?
Yep.
Hello? Yeah, I'm here. It's Ronnie.
We're still cooking? Okay.
Is Ralph there?
I don't think so. That's what I heard a click.
Oh, my goodness.
I heard a click, too. Yeah.
Maybe he'll click back in. Talk amongst yourselves. So isn't that what they used to say
in
coffee talk?
Yeah.
Right. Yes. In class.
David, how are you?
Okay, and you?
Good. Thank you. George,
I'd like to go back and make a point about advanced defensive stats, which I think are still kind of in the statistical dark ages compared to pitching and hitting stats, for the simple reason that nobody makes a fielding play alone. Even if you're standing there camping out under a fly ball, you're standing where you're standing. The host has joined the conference.
God.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, guys, I cut out.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah.
You're
we were talking about you when you...
Yeah.
No, my ears were burning.
Yeah.
All right, have we gotten to Darrell? I hope we have.
We just started to. We're looking forward to talking to him about it, yes.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to set me up for very long.
You know what? I'll tell you what. Why don't we do this? Can you come back next week? Why don't we cut it short? Because it was extended with Wayne, and would that
I
be
should
okay?
be able to. Yeah.
All right, because I want to give you your due. You've been on with me before, and you're terrific. And I'd like you to become a regular part of this. Most of all, because you're from the Poconos.
Yeah, absolutely. Now
all right. Well, the inside scoop is that I went to summer camp in Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania, where you have the good fortune to spend at least half your life. And it's up in the Poconos, and it's what a beautiful setting. You're blessed. So I want to give you your due on the show. I want to talk about Mitch Williams. I want to talk about you, and you'll come back next week, I hope.
That'll be fine. We can nail down the specifics during the week, and I have it down on my calendar.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Great.
George Case, anything you want to say?
Well, no, I think Ralph, I think that'd be great. I'd be looking forward to talking to Darrell next week, and I didn't realize he was up in the Poconos. As you know, I live in the Philadelphia area too, and when I was in the athletic footwear business, spent a lot of time up in the Poconos at the basketball camp. So, I did want to talk to him.
Did you ever get Kid City Camp?
I didn't get to that one. I used to go to the All-Star camp, which was Harry Litwack and Bill Foster up in the Poconos. I think it was Mount
Harry
Pocono.
Litwack with Temple. And,
yeah, exactly.
I remember those days very well, George.
Yeah, well, back then, Ralph, I mean, that was where all the a lot of the NBA players would go up there and spend a couple of days with the kids, and it was a wonderful experience. And there were so many of the basketball camps were there in the Poconos, and part of the education of a basketball player was to go to basketball camp and learn from these pros who would come up there. I had Lou Hudson with me.
We had Paul Arison and Chuck
right.
Bednarik
Yep.
Of the Eagles come up as camp instructors.
Right.
You can't imagine what that means to a 10-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
Well, your life was a fantasy camp as a kid, George, just by being around your dad. That's
yeah. Well, I had a wonderful experience that way, and then was able to when I worked in business was able to do a very similar thing when it came to basketball. But camps and basketball for kids, it's a wonderful experience. They really had a chance to get up close and personal with a pro. I mean, you mentioned, Paul Arison, and I said I had Lou Hudson with me. I mean, they used to get on the floor with the kids, demonstrate, show them things. The kids had would pepper them with all kinds of questions, and it was just a wonderful experience, and I enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to talking to Darryl again, if it's going to be next week, because I have a few comments I wanted to make about, Mitch Williams being in the Philadelphia area, with his nickname, the Wild Thing.
Sure.
A lot of fun experiences when talking about Mitch Williams. And also with Saber, I think, Darryl, you did a presentation one time with a group maybe in New York City about ball players as human beings. And,
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and that
hasn't really been touched on enough.
Right. That's a very personal thing for me because I knew my dad and I knew a lot of players as human beings, not so much as ball players, but as people. And
well, that's one of the things I really wanted to get into with Mitch. I never had a chance to sit down with a major leaguer and ask him about things like, what did it feel like the first time you signed a contract for $1 million?
Right.
What's it like to be away, to have family life as a major leaguer? I did a conference at the Yogi Berra Museum one time on family life as a major leaguer, and boy, that's not an easy thing.
No, it's not, and it depends on how the ball player handles it, and I was fortunate because my dad was a wonderful player, but he was a wonderful father, and I grew up in the game, knowing him as my father, and I've told this to Ralph before. I mean, Mickey Vernon, two-time American League batting champion. For me as a youngster, he was my Uncle Mickey. He wasn't Mickey Vernon, the great first baseman. He was my Uncle Mickey, a family friend. So, next week we can talk more about it, and I'd really look forward to it.
Oh, me too.
I'm going to talk
great.
about my Uncle Slamey next week.
Yeah.
No.
I'd like to hear about
we won't talk about, maybe we'll talk about Slamey on the Bronx show.
There's not enough slow-mos in the world. And, we could use some more slow-mos. When you think of all the names that kids are being given.
Slow-mo with slow-mo. I remember Bud Collins on Sunday mornings, breakfast at Wimbledon. Absolutely. Hey, guys, it's been terrific. Thank you.
Great.
Darryl will be back next week. And
it'll be great.
Chad, I'm going to get you with Wayne. I think you guys are terrific together.
Okay, see you next week, Ralph. That'll be great.
Okay, everybody. Thank you.
And
Yep.
Ronnie,
Bye-bye now.
We didn't hear much from you, but your spirit is nice.
It was very interesting listening to everybody, so it was good. And I'll talk to you tonight at 7.
Absolutely. That's tomorrow night, Ronnie.
Huh?
That's tomorrow night.
It's not tonight?
No, it's tomorrow.
Oh.
Used to be on Tuesdays. Now it's on Wednesdays.
No. The thing with Campanis. Is that
the
tonight?
show with Campanis is tonight. You're right.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Oh, okay. And the other show, the Dodgers show, is on Wednesdays.
On Wednesday, right. Of course. Okay.
All right. We got all the scheduling down pat. I want to thank you all again for being here. Stick on the line, David. We have Michael coming with us for the Bronx show. And I want to ask everybody out there, whether or not you enjoy the offerings, to please box up children's books and take them to the Head Start program in whatever community you live. Kids need to read. They need to develop a passion. They need to take their noses out of the computers and the devices. And they need to be school ready. They are our future. So if you do that, it would be just splendid. Come back next week. We'll see you then. Adios, everybody.